やらなくちゃいけないんだよ。誰かが自分の手を血で染めないと。やめ。
I think if there's one thing to take from AOT, it's that it's not a show with a clear sense of morality to it. Characters are often subjugated to morally gray roles, often leaving the reader to choose who they side with based on their own beliefs. However, I think it's important to consider both perspectives of the characters, and no episode shows this off better than episode 85 titled Traitor. Throughout Season 4, we've seen a new perspective emerge in the form of the Jaegerists, fighting for the survival of the subjects of Ymir on the island through any means possible. They're ruthless, unforgiving, and thick-headed, but ultimately are a group controlled by the fear of their inaction. Whatever you may think of this group, they aren't praised as heroes like in past seasons, but aren't really villains by a typical definition either. On the other side of that is the newly formed Alliance, driven to stop Eren because of their beliefs that genocide is bad. Somehow this is a hot take within the community. So, make of that what you will. Both groups directly oppose each other, leading to conflict, yet neither group's objectively wrong. While the Jaegerists are driven by revenge and fear, the reality that inaction will likely lead to their suffering is true. They're not being irrational. The Alliance sits on the opposite end of this. While what they're doing is far less rational in a survival sense, their desire to fight comes from their morality, not being able to live comfortably on a mountain of corpses they could have saved. To each side, the other is wrong, though as the viewer we see both arguments hold their own merit. It's what makes the show so damn good, because we get to see realistic perspectives on each side of the conflict. And no scene shows this brutal reality in a more heart-wrenching way than the tragic meeting of former cadets. But before we look at that, I want to dig a bit deeper into why this conflict exists in the first place. More specifically, why the story sets up this conflict and what the message is to the reader. One of the themes I really liked introduced multiple times throughout the story is the concept of the children of the forest. It's brought up from Sasha's family and once again with Niccolo. It's a metaphor saying how there are children venturing through a forest with so many dangers, and no one to guide them out. Many people have been in this forest, some were consumed and some escaped, so it's up to those who have escaped the forest to guide the children safely out of it. Kids like Eren, Reiner, Gabi, and Annie, they were kids trapped in this metaphorical forest. Only through adults who know how cruel this world can be yet still let go of their hatred were characters like Gabi able to escape it, and why characters like Reiner were not. Though for Reiner and Eren it's more than that, but that's a topic for another video, just keep hearing me out. One of the main conflicts of these two groups in this episode comes from the confrontation between Armin and Connie meeting Daz and Samuel. Now my first thought watching this episode was, wait, who the fuck were these guys again? And a quick recap, Daz was the guy who screamed a lot, "We're all gonna die!" And Samuel slipped on a banana peel and got hooked in the foot. Not the two most memorable characters. Yet to Armin and Connie, these were two people they had grown up with, two people they called friends, and by the end of this episode, two tragic victims of the cruel world of AOT. And with this conflict between four former allies, the only way the Jaegerists could see them is as traitors. Armin and Connie may be turning against their own people to stop the rumbling, but it's their escape from that forest that put them down this path. Daz and Samuel are both still consumed by that fear and hatred the forest breathes into them, and use it as a justification for their actions. With the experience that Armin, Connie, and the rest of the Alliance have, they know that pushing forward with that reason alone will only contribute to the problem they're already in, so they move past that to do what they believe is right, to do the action that they believe is the least selfish from their perspective. Though from a logical standpoint, stopping the rumbling might not be the best immediate action, they understand that the consequences this brings their conscience and the world are terrible. Genocide is wrong, there's no other way to look at it. They refuse to sit by and watch it happen. They follow the Kantian theory of ethics called deontology, believing in human life, treating others as people rather than a means to an end, and how this affects the worth of their character. They viewed this action following this categorical imperative of right and wrong. It doesn't matter how justified the rumbling is to the rest of the island. An immoral action is simply immoral. They also look at this from a utilitarian perspective. The number of lives needed to sustain their own means that the actions of the Jaegerists are completely unjustified. Even if killing all other humans means an end to their problems, at least temporarily, the guilt of them knowing that they could have stopped it would be all-consuming. They're just doing what they think is the right thing to do. And that's one of the core messages the story wants us to learn. They refuse to let that devil known as fear consume them.
それが私の悪魔。
そいつは俺の中にもいる。カヤの中にも、誰の中にも。みんなの中に悪魔がいるから、世界はこうなっちまったんだ。
じゃあどうすればいいの？
森から出るんだ。出られなくても出ようとし続けるんだ。
We all have a devil inside of us, and if we let it consume us, who knows what it'll let us do. Not only do Daz and Samuel represent the past of Armin and Connie, along with the other cadets they grew up with, but they also represent their past weak selves, the selves who lived in fear and arrogance. While the Alliance has understood the importance of perspective, the Jaegerists are at the core of human selfishness, only valuing their lives because they haven't been shown a reason not to. They're the definition of people stuck in this forest, consumed by the cycle of hatred that plagues the story. Especially through Daz, we see this character in a near perpetual state of fear. He feared fighting in Trost, and he feared the rest of the world when that was revealed. He lacked the same realization that many of the Alliance came to when crossing to sea to Marley, that life is the same on either side of the sea. He simply understood things from the one perspective he could have and justified his actions based on that. The tragedy of this episode is that both parties believe what they're doing is right, the key difference being the ignorance that the Jaegerists try to use to their advantage. Both groups are willing to do whatever it takes to ensure they win. There's a two-sided philosophy to this that both the Alliance and the Jaegerists follow, one that represents both Eren and Mikasa. The world is cruel, yet so beautiful, and to keep it that way you must survive, and the only way to survive is to fight. It's a philosophy that both Eren and Mikasa use to justify their actions. The Jaegerists lean towards the side of fighting to survive, while the Alliance fight to keep the beauty of this world. They're truly two sides of the same coin, both fighting the same battle for different reasons. It's this justification that led Connie to do what he did. Someone had to do it. Someone had to stain their hands with blood. Those words ringing through Connie's head are finally words he truly understood. It allows that click to be made for the viewer too, really emphasizing the importance of perspective, both for Bertolt and for Connie. In order to achieve ideals, sacrifices must be made. Conflict is always inevitable, another fact pointed out by Yelena. It's honestly a really hard scene to watch, not even because I care about these characters necessarily, but because the realization made by Connie in that moment. He tried so hard to avoid this, wanted to believe so badly that he could resolve things peacefully. But there he was, sat in his comrade's blood, left to wonder, why? I chose to look at this scene in particular because of the lesson it really tries to hammer in. Perspective really is important in life. Trying to understand both sides of an argument, being able to play devil's advocate, these are crucial for living peacefully. With one side stuck gripping to their beliefs with all their strength, unable to acknowledge their own faults, conflict will be inevitable. I think AOT is filled with life lessons like these, showing just how real the consequences of our actions could be, and why this episode is crucial to look back on. And that's why of all scenes in this show, I truly do hope you remember that one scene. Thanks for watching.